Hi, Sean here from the Trusted Agent Podcast, and thank you for joining us on today's show, where each week we talk to experts both inside the industry and outside the real estate industry to gain their unique perspectives on what they believe real estate agents can do to build their credibility, efficiencies, and connections with others. A huge shout out to our sponsor, Rezo Real Estate Sales Online, who's absolutely revolutionizing how real estate agents deal with prospective buyers and vendors. Their online platform that manages the offers and acceptance process is simple, easy to use, giving time back to the agents so they can do what they do best. All right, so stick with me and let's see who today's guest on the show is. Hi, everyone. Sean here from the Trusted Agent Podcast, and I'm so excited to be welcoming our guest for today, John Cunningham from Cunningham Real Estate. G'day, John. How are you?
Great, Sean. Doing good. Awesome day out there.
Excellent. And where are you today? Where do we find you?
I'm in the office today. Wednesday's one of my days in the office. I work Mondays. Actually, no, I don't work Mondays. I work Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So that's my official working week to fit in with all the other things in my life.
That's fantastic. I want to delve a bit into that because that's part of where I really want to put some focus in today. In thinking about the guests that we wanted to get onto the Trusted Agent Podcast, your name was certainly at the top of the list. I've only been in the industry for about 5.5 years, and I've got to know you through industry events and places like the Real Estate Results Network with Michael Sheargold, and got to spend some time with you. And what you've done throughout your whole career, which is mid-70s, 1970s is when you started?
77, yeah.
Wow. Okay. There's so much there I want to unpack. But what I do know for certain is that when it comes to your local community and your name, it seems so simpatico. So for those that perhaps don't know you, would you mind just giving us a brief breakdown of your last 45 years in the industry?
It's getting close. Look, yeah, it's been an interesting unpacking exercise that which I've been doing now for probably the last 10 years since I've officially been referred to as a veteran of the industry. So that's an interest. I still feel 22 inside, but anyway. It's been interesting. I left school and all I had was a passion for real estate, for property and building. I actually didn't do very well at school because I couldn't read things on the chalkboard because I needed glasses and didn't get them. Anyway, I eventually got glasses, went to TAFE, did a valuation course, and started working in the public service, which didn't suit me, and got out of that. I got a job as a property manager, and then within 2 years of doing that job, I turned to my boss and said, look, I think I could do better than the sales agents you have here. So I started doing that at 22 and hit the ground running. I just started, matching people with properties and it just came naturally to me. It was just, I couldn't believe it. And in my first year in real estate, I doubled the income of my father. That's just a bizarre thing to happen. That my father was in middle management, but to be a 22, 23-year-old and just understanding how people worked, but also having a really good technical knowledge of property through my training. I did an associate diploma evaluation, and so I had that really strong grounding. And the funny thing I found out was I was actually smarter than most of the real estate agents who've been around for a long, long time. So people wanted to deal with me because they wanted to give a young bloke a go, but I also knew what I was talking about. It was a bizarre thing. I sometimes look back and scratch myself and wonder how I did what I did, but it was a people business and it just suited my style.
Yeah, and real estate certainly hasn't moved away from being a people business. So there's a couple of phrases there I just wanted to pause and explore a little bit with you. One, matching people with properties. I've never heard anyone actually phrase it as authentic and as genuine as that. What's your philosophy there?
Oh, look, there's all kinds of different ways that you can do that. Back in when I started, there was a lot of stock on the market. Buyers had a lot to choose from. And it was just understanding their needs and matching those needs. And that's how I hit the ground running. Was we had this thing called multi-list, EAC multi-list back then. And so all agents pulled their listings and you had access to everything. So all I did was understand what people needed. And when something got listed, I matched those people with those properties before anyone else did. It was a speed game. I used to go to these things called a caravan, and I had a pocket full of 20-cent coins. And this is high tech back then. And you try and you know the phone boxes that worked and the phone boxes that didn't, right? No mobile phones, nothing like that. Okay, it's before two-way radios, and so I would go and look at these properties. I would have my buyer match cards with me in a classic 4x3 cards. And I would see these properties, I'd run in, run out, I'd get to the local phone box and I'd ring up a couple of buyers and arrange appointments to show them those properties that day. And I'd go around and look at the next ones. And the agents were just lazily wandering around. I was like a little ferret running around, 22, 23-year-old ferret running around, seeing things, matching them. And before you knew it, I look back and I think I saw something like 40 properties in my first year of real estate. And
oh, wow.
It was just an extraordinary thing. And I got headhunted by a few other guys who I was selling more of their properties than their agents were. And it was just it was just a work ethic that it was instilled in me from my parents, and but also a service ethic. My parents instilled a lot of really good things in me. One of the things that we did once a month was we would go to the Cerebral Palsy Centre, which back then was called the Spastic Centre, which was nearby where we lived. And we would go there on a Sunday morning once a month and play with the cerebral palsy children. And so that gave me a great appreciation for my life at a very young age. So my gratitude levels were very high. And then it was also a service element that came into play, which was, you get rewarded when you look after people. And this is an industry that does that in spades. But you have to have that client first, or that consumer first philosophy. You have to have that instilled in your values and in your beliefs for it to work. And unfortunately, most people don't. They have a self first. And you'll never reach a place where you can understand the more until you actually understand that if you look after people first, you will get well looked after in spades. And it's the same in your team. I've always had that generosity of spirit and generosity in practice. To me, is one of the greatest attributes of a good leader. And so I started very early doing that, and it worked.
My dad, who is a salesperson, B2B sales, he said to me at a young age, he did two things for me that really stuck for me. When I was about 7 years old, he gave me the book of How to Win Friends and Influence People. So I started reading that the first time when I was 7. And the other thing he said was, you can get everything you want if you can help people get what they want first. Yeah. And those two things have always stuck with me. How did your dad feel that first year when you doubled his income for the year?
I never told him.
Oh, good. I was going to say. Oh my God.
And I bought my first house at 23 years old. I earned enough in my first year in sales to put down a 15% deposit on a house. So it was. I mean, clearly, he must have thought, I'm doing all right. But yeah, he instilled 4 really important values, my mum and dad, and he sort of instilled them at an early age, all the way through our lives, but also reinforced it when I went into real estate. And the first one was always tell the truth. It's quite simple. One, it's the right thing to do, but 2, it's very practical because people forget their lies. So you remember the truth, you forget your lies. The second one was always apply common sense. Classic thing of, it's not that common, but it's the smartest thing to do. Third one was just, be nice to people. It costs you nothing, but it has the greatest return on investment. And so it was really, these things are really practical. And then the fourth one was, for jobs worth doing, it's worth doing well. Don't cut corners, follow through. Always follow through on your promises. Make sure you meet expectations, but if a job's worth doing, do it well. So those 4 things is what I train my team. I've always trained people on, and that's the basis of what I do. It's quite simple.
Yeah. Those technical skills that you learned early in the TAFE, you mentioned also that you figured out how people worked. Was there any influences that you got a hold of early that helped you work that out, or was it just something inherent and instinctive
I
inside
think it
you?
was instinctive. I think it was instinctive because I can't look back and say, oh, that came from a certain place. What I think I understood was how do I like I'm in a very competitive industry and there's some pretty aggressive characters out there, and so how did I find my niche? How did I find my way? I call it my way. That's what we call it here. It's the Cunningham's way. It's the way that we do business, and it was inherently again simple to follow through with because it was getting to know people, being very curious how you can help them. And then following through with that. So the surprise factor for a lot of people was that, oh, you did that for me, or wow, I didn't expect that. And so it became really obvious to me is that when you understand your value and people understand your value, they actually understand what you're worth. So by doing these things, and a technical thing, for example, was the construction of a home, I was able to talk that through with buyers who were just in the unknown, they didn't know what they didn't know. And I was able to enlighten them, to make things clear. And what I understood very early on was when you make things clear and you help people understand what they're entering into, their appreciation is really high, one, but two, they make really good decisions. So all people want to do is be informed to make a good decision. So I did a lot of informing. People were able to make good decisions, both buyers and sellers in that space. And I found the concept of negotiating a deal was simply about creating the right environment for that to happen in. And when you create that right environment, the actual negotiation is much, much easier because you've started that negotiation process from the beginning. When you first meet someone, you're building trust.
Yeah, I think the informing is such an important element because as someone who recently bought 2 investment properties, you don't know what you don't know, and I had the benefit of having some insights into behind the curtain in the real estate industry. But as a buyer, there's still so many questions I had, and you don't want to look silly. And sometimes you don't want to, clarify something, but then there's the other times where you just don't know which questions even to ask. So I could see how that would be an absolute benefit of building that trust and rapport with someone else.
Well, it was also being intuitive about what people didn't know they didn't know. Excuse my French here, but when you know someone, right, and they're a dickhead, right, and they know that they're a dickhead, you never have to tell them that, right? Yeah. You have this level of understanding
that he's a dickhead.
Don't embarrass them.
Yeah.
Don't embarrass them. They know you've caught them out. They know, but don't go there. And it's a thing where it's the same with what they don't know. You don't have to shine the torch on what they don't know. You can take them into a place where it becomes apparent that you are informing them and filling in the gaps, and they are hugely appreciative because, again, people make good decisions when they've been given the right information to make a good decision. And so you don't have to highlight the fact that they're an idiot and you know more. It's just simply feeding the right information at the right time. And it just became intuitive to me to see that. And it's a hard thing to explain. There was one guy in my career, a guy called Rod Jones, who recently passed away. He was probably the biggest influence in my early part of my career because he filled in a bunch of other gaps that, in other words, how to deal with difficult people. I was able to do certain things with that, but then you get the absolute guy that is just, what's this young whippersnipper 23-year-old trying to help me or do whatever? I know better than you. And he gave me a whole lot of really interesting ways of diffusing difficult people. So it was great. It was, again, same philosophy, create the right environment for those things to happen. But also he taught me a lot of when to walk away. And I've walked away from a lot of things in my career. I've walked away from segments of the market that there was just too many people in there in the DH category that I just thought, you know what, life's too short. I want to deal with people I like. Yeah. I want to deal with like-minded people. I don't want to have to deal in a space where people expect me to compromise, because I won't compromise. I won't bend. like a palm tree. I have my values, and it's just that simple. So if you expected me to do that, it's not going to happen. And so their decisions, and I know a lot of people that I've been mentoring over the years who've made those decisions as well, and they're so glad they did, because it eats you. It eats your innards away if you let it. If you go down paths that are not right for you.
Every day we're given an opportunity to make choices in our life. So many people think that they're stuck in their current situation, whereas every day is a new day to change direction. I think that's great that you are helping other people realize that there's other paths for them out there. When you got poached by other people, you're 22, 23, and you're going, what stage did you get to where you felt like, I have my own business here, I've built my own brand, and what was that journey like?
Yeah, look, I think that what happened in the early part is that my success was noticed by a lot of people, and the person I was working for was a complete idiot, the first guy, and I had to get out of there anyway. Went to the next guy, and he was pretty good. It wasn't a poach, it was I applied for a job. The next one was probably the only other time in my career where I was actually approached by someone to say, hey, come on board, and that was Rod Jones. And so I was there for 10 years. And Rod left and started his own business, and then another guy kept that business, bought that business. And I never felt like, even though it was offered to me that I could be part of it, it never came to fruition. So I kept, being fobbed off. And in the end, Anne and I just decided that there were so many things that we wanted to do our way that weren't hindered by a brand, weren't hindered by another different way of thinking. And so in 1991, we started Cunningham. So we started Cunningham's with a very, very different philosophy. We decided to do all the things that others weren't doing, to do all the things better that others were doing, to completely turn around the way that clients were dealt with, and created what we call a partnership plan. So we went into the marketplace with a value proposition where we were going into partnership with an owner to sell their property. We were it's not an us and them situation. We're not an adversarial situation, but we were partners in a joint venture in achieving the best possible outcome. So, I've always had that as part of what I've done. And by having our own business, that enabled us to do that very effectively. Then to bring in the people into the business who had the same set of values and approaches to people.
So that was in 1991, did you say?
Yeah.
Excellent. And with that view in mind, partnership, and I keep thinking about one of your opening statements there of matching people with properties. There seems to be a common theme here, is that genuine care and of being of service to people. But I think this is the partnership element is where we start to see maybe you becoming more part of the community and more sympathetic on the relationship.
Yeah, look, it was because that had always been in me, and all through my life, it has been part of what I've done. It became a natural. Before we started the business, we turned up to the local preschool with our first daughter, and by that afternoon, my wife was president of the kindy, and within a week, I was president of the New South Wales Independent Preschool Association. Now, how the hell do you get to that place? It was, I'll go along the representative, and then no one's going to stand up and do the job. And I went, I'll do the job. I did that for 4 years or something, and Anne was that. And then the kids moved to school within the first year. I'm president of PNC. She's running fates. We ran a fate, and we made 10 times the amount of money that the previous people had made. We had international coverage on a fate. We had the Federal Minister for the Environment open the fate. It was called an Environmental Awareness Fair in 1990. It was a completely different. No one had thought about what we were doing, and created something that had never been done before, and that's just what we've done. So we've been involved. I was actually on school councils, and my kids didn't even go to the school.
I was just about to say, did they move school and you stayed?
No. They heard about what I was doing there, and my kids got off to high school, and they asked the local school what schools we sponsor. can you run our school council for us? I did that for 4 years, and it's just we've been involved in the community. It's synonymous with our brand. It's congruent with everything that we do, and it just was a natural thing. You're there to help others. So how can you've got a set of skills, and my skills are all about people, very persuasive, influencing skills to achieve outcomes. And I'm a great committee of one. But sometimes there might be 6 people in the committee. They call it the Kevin Rudd form of leadership. It didn't work in federal politics, but it worked in a school council. The classic facilitation of getting people to see the best way forward was just something.
How is that?
Sorry.
And how is that? How do you achieve?
How is that? It's just putting people into a frame of what they don't know. Now they know. Because most people just don't know how to get there. You have to show them a path to get there. It's funny, we changed the school uniform in our second year at the school in 1989, and that uniform's still there.
Oh, really?
It was clearly way ahead of its time. But, it's an interesting thing in that space when you start to think about what you can bring to a community. And I just think a lot of people don't appreciate the skills they have in this industry, how they can apply that. They think, I'll pay some money over to the sporting club or to the school and I'll sponsor it. That's just saying, okay, I feel a responsibility, or I might get my name up. And then there's an expectation, what am I going to get out of it?
Yeah.
If you start going into everything with an expectation, what are you going to get out of it? It's a false involvement in the community. Everything we've done is just because we can and because it will help, right? Now, as you're probably aware, when you do that, it just comes flowing back to you. And, don't expect it, but I tell you what, the reciprocity in that space is insane. I remember doing a huge fundraising thing for a thing called Action Against Poverty back in 2006, which was a huge thing between the Manly community and a community in Sulawesi in Indonesia, where we were creating sort of sister city relationships. And we raised something like, I think, 300 grand out of a community thing. I got all the local agents, or majority of them, probably about 60, 70% of them on the lower northern beaches, to donate. I think it was 1% of their commissions for the month of November in 2006. And I think we raised about 30 grand from that little exercise. And then I ran a huge ball for about, I think it's about 300 people. We raised 60 grand on that. And I realised at the end of it, the amount of work I put into that, I probably should have just donated the 50, 60 grand from after what I put into it. But, you can, so you do. And it's like, didn't that affect your business? Didn't that take you out of your business? Well, when you're working for the community, you're still working in your business. That's how I see it. And I know that, people still come to us because of that. It's when you align yourself with certain values and certain people in the community, and I've done fundraising for local politicians of all colours, right? There's been red, green and blue functions that I've been the auctioneer at or I've helped organise because they're good people, not necessarily because of the political leaders they have or political party, because I know that they're good people. I didn't do any for Tony though, but anyway, that's another story. But there's Mike Bevan was a local member. I did some great stuff with Mike and his protege James Griffin, and I still do work for them. I did work for the Greens Council here. I did all this stuff because they're good people doing good works. And so that's a key element when you start to understand the congruence of your brand in the community. It's about what you're doing, not what you're paying for.
I've always thought of good policies, good ideas, and good people should always come first over the party. It doesn't matter. Just focus on what's really going to make a difference.
That's my mantra, is making a difference. If I can make a difference in anything that I do, objective achieved. And it's the same with my team. The whole idea of a leader is to make a difference in people's lives. And when you do that and you empower the people around you, the business flourishes. And so that was a big shift for me when I decided to let go to grow the business. It paid off massively. So, that's another part of the journey.
So let's talk about that transition for yourself, if you don't mind. You talked about shortening down your work days, but it's not as simple as that. There's the responsibilities, the team, everything else that comes along with it. Can you tell us a little bit about that transition?
Sure. I mean, look, I decided, and after some advice, I was very involved with a group called Best Practice, which was a guy called Robert Bevan, who started the first, I suppose, broader Australia-wide training programs for agents, and I was involved in that. There's probably, 500 agencies across Australia actively involved in it. There's probably 2,000 subscribing to the system or the newsletters and so on. But I met some amazing people through that across Australia, and I learned so much, and particularly from a business perspective. And one of the big things was you'll never be captain, coach, leading, try scorer, and grow a business. And that's what I was. I'm the number one agent. Everything depends on me, and I'm trying to do everything. And it simply can't work. One thing I did do, even through all of that, though, was I made a commitment to my family that we would have holidays, that I would never work on a Sunday, that I would do certain things. And we started doing, it took the kids international trips every year since 1994. We started business in 91. We took holidays, and I'd started taking 6 to 8 weeks holidays very early on in my business. And that's called payoff. If you don't have that balance and that congruency in your life and the payoff to it, what are you missing out on? I don't care what I'm missing out. I'm all focused on what I've got. I've got is my family, and my family means more to me than anything else. And the life I want those kids to have, and what comes out of what I can contribute to that, is more important to me than business. Business will feed that, but I don't have to be here all the time to achieve that. I want to be efficient and effective in what I do. So this let go to grow concept was about extracting myself from doing everything to finding my flame. And it was a good 10-year exercise, Sean, to go from 91 through to 2005. I was full on, in there from 2003 onwards. So actually 2003, I took a trip to Melbourne and went down, saw Philip Webb and a whole bunch of other people. And I met James Tosterman for the first time and spent a half a day with James. And an interesting thing happened down there. First question James asked me is, "What's your GCI?" And I went, "What's GCI?" And he said, "Your gross commission income." I went, "Oh, actually, I don't know." And he said, "We'll find out." So I got on the phone, rang my EE up, and she said, "Okay, you did 1.35 back in 2003." I said, "James, 1.35. He said, "Oh, I did 1.5. He said, "Do you realise you're probably in the top 10 agents in Australia?" I went, "No."
And you don't even know your GCI.
I didn't even know my GCI.
Because that's not how you're measuring success.
Not how I'm measuring success. And so
Yeah.
it was a funny sort of thing back then to go, what does it actually mean? But it was also, I was at the peak of my career, and all those sort of things everything was happening. The business was growing, but it wasn't growing to the level I needed to grow for me to actually step into a different role. So from 2003, 2013, it was a gradual exit from all those roles into just purely a leadership role. So from 2015 onwards, I haven't listed and sold real estate, as an agent. I've referred my leads, and I've referred my clients, and I've assisted with different things in the interim, but not a lot. And now it's more just me feeding leads. I just sold my next door neighbour's property last week. He rang me up and said, "We're thinking of doing this." I said, "We just sold one in the corner. Maybe we've got some buyers." He said, "Yep, sounds great." So I got one of my guys to look after him. We showed one buyer through, sold it in a matter of a couple of days for a price that everyone was happy with, $7.5 million. And he goes, "Yeah, that's great. That'll do me. Peak of the market. Thanks very much." He's in banking. He said, I know this is a really good decision. That was easy. And so that's the extent of what I do, is advisory now in that space. but 90% of my life is leadership in the team. But again, it was a journey. It took time to extract myself, and then during that time as well, 2013 was when we decided to open the business up to all the key people in the business to take on equity. So that was the next phase in that progression as well.
And how much do you think that's had a positive impact on your business in opening up that equity model for your people?
Well, if I go back to the two key components, two key changes, or three key changes that have happened. In 96, we started with the professionals. We left the professionals. We started in 91, left in 96, and went independent. That was a huge uplift to the business. In 2006, we joined Michael Sheargold's RER network. Within 2 years, we doubled the business between that and 2008. And then in 2013 to now, we've doubled the business again when we've done the equity participation model. So we've now got 10 partners in the business, and they're not just all sales agents. That was a really important thing that we made the decision was we needed the key stakeholders in the business. So our financial controller, our general manager, and our senior property manager are partners in the business.
It might seem obvious, but why did you make that decision to not make sure they're not all sales people?
I'd seen plenty of businesses go in the model where it's just they're rewarding the senior sales agents by offering them to buy a business. I go, well, they're not actually invested in the core value of the business. Core value of the business is its people and the property management business. So I need the people who protect that core asset, as well as the agents to sell and continue to flourish and grow. So everyone in those roles, everyone has a role in the business, and then they have their role as a shareholder. So it's quite a distinct difference in understanding how that operates. And we've gone through some growth and acquisition phases. We've now got 4 offices. When we started that, we had the 1. So the footprint's expanded. And sure, look, I know a lot of my colleagues that have done it much bigger and much quicker than we have. And the reason that we haven't is that I just couldn't do it. I was too many other things in my life that would suffer if I took that path. And there's no way I'm going to spend the money I earn. I mean, seriously, it's like it's bizarre, this accumulation of wealth for the sake of it. I can't comprehend. It's beyond my comprehension. I've had the most amazing life, and I own a lot of real estate. I travel the world. I do all these things. I can help my kids. I can help the community. I can help the underprivileged. I can get involved in things. And I think, okay, if it was just to do that philanthropy thing, absolutely. But I can also do that in what I'm doing. I can use my skills in the community to help others in a way that money just not necessarily would do. There's plenty of people with more money that can contribute than I do, even though we do it a lot. But that's it. It's a picture of a life. Your life isn't just your work. Your life is so much more. You want your life to be interesting. You want your life to be full of experiences. And if I can involve my family in those experiences as much as I possibly can, absolutely, that's the key. And if I can get my team to see that the opportunities that life presents to them, fantastic.
I'm glad you looped back around on that, John, because 6 to 8 weeks of holidays a year, not working Sundays, international travel every year with your children. For some real estate agents in today's society, it seems unfathomable that now you've ridden bear markets, bull markets, so imagine though, you've always maintained that consistency. Do you think agents today create barriers for themselves that aren't necessarily have to be there?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I think the barriers they create in the first instance is not understanding why they're doing what they're doing. And people say, oh, it's all right for you. You're in this fantastic location where you can do these things. Well, no, it's not. That's not the case. There's been plenty of agents like the GFC was a blip on the radar for us. Seriously, it had zero impact on our business. And I know lots of other businesses that were absolutely suffering through that. And the reason that was a blip on the radar for us was that we are the safe haven for people. We're the trusted advisor. So when things go crook, they flood into us because they know that they're in safe hands. And so if you create an environment where you're just looking after the next transaction, which you mentioned very early on, Sean, about, they're just transaction-based agents, they're not relationships. If you're just constantly looking at the transaction, and I had an agent working for us who left about 7 or 8 years ago now, and he was saying to me, client satisfaction is low. What's that about? And I go, well, you just focused on the result, not the experience. The client service is all about the experience. Your results are okay, but have you gone above and beyond? Have you provided, or are you just winging most of what you do, hoping for the best? And so that's not a model for sustainability. And he's doing fine, and he always has. But it just doesn't sit right with me, that approach. This is about service. If you take the service ethos to the full extent and understand that as an agent, you have a common law responsibility to your client, which is that you are being them when you're acting for them. You're not being you. Our license is a privilege. It is truly an amazing privilege to have a real estate license. And in that responsibility is to act in the interest of your client. If you do that, you will be looked after. How many people, I've come back, just had one the other day, 20 years ago, I told them not to sell their property, but to do an addition on it because they loved where they lived, and I gave them a great architect and a builder. They lived there for another 20 years. What do you think they did when they sold? They rang.
Came to you.
You told us to do this, and now we want you to sell the property. Now, this is a long game. This is if you want to have a reputational business and understand that people have long memories, some people have short memories. This is a game that if you go about it the right way, it just continues to feed you. And it's just again, I can't comprehend people who don't see it any other way, but it is a decision. You said choices earlier. It's a whole bunch of choices that you make in your career. So the decisions I've made to make and understand my value, which means other people will understand my value and they'll understand what I'm worth, will give me longevity and enable the business to grow and surround yourself with those right people. Andrew, one of our partners here, Andrew Lutsey, he's learned a lot about taking breaks from me. And at 39 years old.
Sorry, breaks from you, or he's learned from you to take breaks?
His family, So he takes at least 8 weeks off a year, and that's just part of his non-negotiable strategy. He puts the energy and effort in. He knows his worth, and so I just encourage people to see life that way. If you see it that way, you will find the space to do it. You will take a path where it's a classic case of if you've got less time, you'll actually do more because the time will fill, the space will fill with what you need to do. So you're not wasting time. You've been really efficient with your time, and therefore you're really effective with your time. And you can do twice as much as someone else in the same amount of time. So I find the excuse of, but I'll miss out on this, I'll miss out on that. People aren't setting themselves up to actually, I plan these things 12 months in advance as well. So it's happening, it's non-negotiable. It's one of the things called frequent flyers, fly at the pointy end because you've been smart enough to get all these points accumulated from your lovely clients over the years. So, but it's just a strategy to go about it, to plan. Again, I understand everyone's not as fortunate as we've been, and we're very grateful for that. But think about it from the beginning. Think about the plan and how you're going to go about your life and put it all in.
I love that you're planning 12 months ahead. Some people don't, and it never happens. But if you put a deadline on something that you're planning for, you have to commit to it. So that's great. I've written down a lot of points, but I am interested in, we've covered off some. If you're repeating yourself, that's okay. But for agents today that are looking to build greater credibility or organization efficiencies in connection with others, what are the top 3 to 5 tips that you could offer them?
Cut the bullshit, number one. I mean, seriously, this is a game that is so full of it. And people are sick of it. Why are we still down the bottom, third from the bottom or second from the bottom, depending on which one you read? That's because there's so much bullshit played. I mean, the whole showing off of this industry right now is just pathetic. People think they're rock stars, and you know, you're a real estate agent selling real estate. Great, it might be prestigious, but drop the bullshit. You know, it's just be genuine. You know, I look at like a guy called like Michael Pallier over in the eastern suburbs. It's a genuine, straightforward guy, no airs and graces, but a guy that looks after people. And then he's surrounded by a whole lot of showy nonsense in that world. And it's the same over here, no different in Manly as it is to there. But that number one is that cut the bullshit. Just play a transparent, open game. Number two would be to understand your worth. Understand what you're worth and make sure that your clients understand your worth. If you don't actually go, this is a classic iceberg syndrome. If you're just about a surface person, you only see what's on the surface, or your clients only see what's on the surface, and you're only seeing what's on the surface with them, you're actually not finding out what the true motivations of people are. You're not being curious sufficiently. You've got to go below the surface. So they have to see you're below the surface, which is where all the work's done. You know, 80% of it's below the surface, and 80% of them is below the surface. You know what that space is, Sean? That's what they don't know. They don't know.
Yeah.
This is where we provide our true value. If you're just living on the surface, it's a wing and a prayer space. It's smoke and mirrors. It's froth and bubble. It's all that nonsense stuff. But for me, for longevity, for sustainability of a career, and to be able to sleep at night, I sleep really well at night. I've got no skeletons in closets. I've got none of that sort of nonsense carry on. It's because I'm delving below the surface. People are understanding what I'm going to put into it, what my worth is, and how I'm going to bring all that unknown, all that invisibility, all that you don't know to the surface, so they can make great decisions. So that's number two in that space. And number three would be to understand that your life isn't just work. You know, you have a life where it starts with your health and you, right? Everything that you do, you've got to understand your health and well-being are critical to looking after your family, because you're pretty useless dead and you're pretty useless divorced. And this divorce rate's insane. You know, people said stupid things to me over the years, Sean. Oh, you've got so many beautiful young women in your team. Isn't that tempting? It's like, what?
No.
The hell? Where does that thinking come from?
Yeah.
I can't comprehend it. But then I see around me in the industry, guys married with kids, running off with secretaries and doing stupid stuff. And I go, don't you appreciate what you've got in the life that you've got, and the life you can lead, and the fulfillment you can have in that life, instead of just the momentary stuff? I mean, I love a bit of spontaneity and all that, and we're, as a family, we're great on that. But really, is that how you life? Is that the value of your life, to start doing stupid stuff? So see the value of your life. See the value that your life can provide you, and appreciate your health. Because when something happens to change that, sometimes it's too late. But when you're given an opportunity, when something happens and you can go, wow. You know, fortunately for me, when I had something happen to me, it was like I had a great appreciation for my life. That's just given me a complete recalibration again to go, right, don't lose track of those key functions of what you're doing and your health and your well-being, and make sure that you live the life you want to lead.
I was about to ask, did you have something happen to you? Scary?
Yeah, I had advanced cancer, prostate cancer, back in 2011.
Yeah.
And 2007. It's so long ago, I forgot when it was. I was really fortunate that I had my insurance agent sold me a policy back in 1985. Part of that was to get an annual blood test for the policy, and one of those was the PSA, and my PSA had been normal all the way through to 2007, and then it tripled.
Yeah, right.
Almost tripled, doubled to tripled, and he said, "Oh, that's not good." Doctor said, so off to the surgeon, and they went, biopsy, your prostate's on the outside of your cancer's on the outside of your prostate. It might have broken out, it might already be on its way through your body. And so I had surgery, and it was an advanced cancer, and it had broken out. But the surgeon got it all, to a lot of fat and nerves. And so I had potential, function issues as a result of that. And so, 14, 15 years later, I'm cancer free. I have an annual checkup, a blood test checkup, and that's been negative ever since. And I went into a really important mindset shift to make sure my nerves were all back to normal. It took 4 years, and that was a tough time to go through. But at the same time, it wasn't, because it enabled me to take a different view of life and also to understand the power of the mind in healing. And so, all my functions were back normal after 4 years. So it was, pretty amazing thing to go through. Clearly, you don't want to go through it, but it's great life lessons.
It certainly makes you more aware. My father passed away of prostate, and my life insurance policy, I do get an annual checkup, and I'm always looking at the PSA just to make sure. And well,
seriously, mate, I wouldn't be here if I didn't.
Yeah.
If I hadn't have had that, it would have been too late. It would have gone through, and I would have had multiple organ cancers, and I would not be here today. And so, that insurance guy saved my life.
There you go. They're not all bad, are they?
Not all bad. No.
I had a couple other points. Thank you for those three. And I love that life values and valuing your life. I think that's really important. Knowing your worth, and I think you kind of pointed at showing people the path. I really love that. In that's what's helped you in the path and past, and the influence and persuasion element. I think it's important in sales anyway, but there is a degree of difference of how people view influence and persuasion skills and tactics. What's your personal view on the appropriate use of them?
Yeah, look, I don't see them as tactics. That's the key. Yeah. The key to me is it's a skill that I have to first of all be curious to understand people's needs. Right? If you're curious enough, where your curiosity is a genuine interest in that, you can win business in the first 5 minutes of meeting someone. So if you're differentiating yourself in many different ways and differentiating the points of value or points of difference, the key to that is actually understanding what the outcome is. Now, to me, the outcome is quite simple. The outcome is that I want to enhance my client's life. I want them to make great decisions. And I know that I'm the best person that they're ever going to meet for that to happen. So that's a belief system. Yeah. And it's simply because I know that I will not put my interests first. Right? It's just never going to happen. I'm never going to put my interests first. And so that belief that I have, and making sure that my clients understand it, that is the way that I'm going to operate. It's all about the delivery. I can make all these promises in the world, but I used to have a fee system based on delivery. I'd say, look, I don't care what you pay me as a fee. Just you decide once I've delivered the outcome. And you might say, okay, someone's going to do it 1%. Okay, fine, 1%. So what if I said to you, between 1% and 3%, you choose, and I'll deliver everything, and then you can make the call.
Yeah.
Right. So I did that for a long time. Guess what the average fee was?
I know what I'd love to say.
What
was it?
2.2.
Okay, that's incredible. That's incredible, because so many people, for the fear of missing out or fear of self-doubt, and they wouldn't even have the gumption to put that forward. They're expecting that people would just, why would they pay 3 when they can pay 1? And that's
no one ever paid 1. No one ever paid 1. I think the lowest I ever got was 1.5, and the highest I got was 3.5, which was beyond the over. Yeah. So look, you back yourself. I had nothing to fear. Right? There's nothing to fear when you back yourself, and it's just interesting. It's just how you see life. It's how you see life and what you're doing. and we get paid incredibly well for what we do, quite frankly. And I think a lot of people get incredibly paid for not doing a lot. They're in the right place at the right time. They've created a certain persona, and there might be an attraction agent, whatever you want to call it. But the value they bring is in the result, which could have been achieved by anyone. But they've actually won the business on a whole bullshit game. And so they've told everyone what they want to hear. They've played the game the way they think the owner wants to play it, and they end up getting the money. How many times I'll get you $9 million, and we said, well, it's worth $6 million, and they sell it for $6 million, but they got the money.
Yeah.
And you get angry for 2 minutes, and then you move on. And it's just part of this game. There's plenty of business out there, and you're not going to win it all. And just be gracious in defeat. It's incredible what people do when they lose something. Unbelievable.
Yeah, well, it is a competitive industry, and I think how we handle ourselves in defeat tells us a lot more about the measure of a person than when it's all sunshine and roses. I love your mantra, John, and I find it so authentically you, to enhance people's lives, to help them make greater decisions, and that you're the perfect person to help deliver that for them. I think that speaks really true, and about that confidence and certainty in backing yourself, which I feel that some people just don't have, and they portray a front, maybe overcompensating at times. I think if people can, if I could add on to your worth, back yourself or build your self-confidence, because you don't need to be afraid. I love that.
No, it's the fear that's astounded me. We've got to make some leaps of faith in this in our lives. I'm a very risk-averse human. I could have taken a lot more risks in life, but I look at the risks that I've taken compared to most people, and they go, "Wow, you're a risk taker." I don't consider myself.
I actually thought you were a risk taker. You're a risk averse.
No. I've hardly ever made a bad decision. I've never made a bad investment decision. I've made a few bad people decisions, but you work those out. But I could have accumulated a lot more wealth. A lot more. I've done very well, but that was just different levels of risk that I wasn't prepared to risk my family in those circumstances. And so I like calculated risks, and I'm a person who calculates everything. So being a trained valuer and having all that, I understand. I can look at like my reconciliations. Back in the day when it was all manual, and the property manager going, "Oh, we just can't find these numbers," and I would go there. I don't know how. It's like a Rain Man thing. There's just a weird thing with numbers where I could look for something that wouldn't balance, and I could find it. I can't work it out, but it just happens. So there are things that they're from maths is a natural thing for me to understand numbers and understand risk from a financial perspective and all those things. So and I've always run this business with great reserves for rainy days. And we went through the GFC, and we went through the first. If you remember back 2018-19 when the Banking Royal Commission and the market tightened everything, we thought, okay, what's going to happen here? And nothing happened for us. And then we went into the first part of the pandemic and came out the other end. And I remember Andrew saying to me one day, he said, "John, that you're constantly saving for that rainy day, but we never get wet." It's like, I go, one day, mate, one day. But it's great having a business where you feel, and again, being in the pandemic, we said to our team, "We'll look after you. No one's getting kicked out of here. No one's going to. We're not lowering salaries, not doing any of that. We're prepared for this."
Yeah.
And then the market went crazy anyway, so we didn't have to do that. But that's just again a taking view of how you want to live your life, how you want to run your business, and how you like to sleep at night.
John, I thank you so much for your time today. You're such a true gentleman. I love spending time with you and hearing you speak every time an opportunity I get. Michael Sheargold owes this one. He had 2 shout-outs today. So he's definitely worth reaching out to as well. Thank you so much for being so generous with your journey and insights along the way.
Pleasure, mate. It's been fun. I could talk all day.
Well, I look forward to the next time we catch up. All right, for our
Awesome.
viewers and listeners, thank you for joining us today. I know you would have taken a lot out today as well. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Trusted Agent Podcast. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.